Do you have friends with short games that look like this? Does your short game look like this?
I hate this game. There's a reason why players might struggle with wedge play around the green. Richard Rice, PGA golf professional here, and today we're going to talk about why. So the cut and dry secret to being a good wedge player around the greens is understanding how to use the bounce. Before we get into how to use the bounce, I want to talk about 3 reasons I see all the time that cause people to not properly use the bounce. All right, reason number one would be too much shaft lean at impact, right? As we get the shaft leaning, the leading edge of your golf club, that sharp leading edge is introduced to the ground. That's the only part of your club that's in the ground at that point, and that part will dig straight into the ground and not be very forgiving at all. Reason number 2, a back ball position. When I see people put the ball back in their stance and their weight forward, that causes them to have a steep downswing as well as have to lean the shaft in order to make a decent shot. When we have a steep swing combined with a leaning shaft, we tend to get a digging action just like that. The third reason I see why people struggle to use the bounce is simply because their hands tend to outrace the club head in the downswing. Right? So when we get those hands tugging on the handle and they outrace the club head, you can see once again we're adding shaft lean, which introduces once again the leading edge to the ground, and we'll start to dig. So why is it that more advanced players tend to struggle with this concept? The reason is simple. We are taught very early on in this game that we should have some shaft lean at impact, mainly for the full swing. When we get into the short game and we continue to take that shaft lean into our short game, we're going to get into trouble around the greens. So the better players out there, listen up, you're struggling around the greens because you have too much shaft lean and you're not properly using the bounce of your club. So let's get into 3 simple tips on how to use the bounce of your golf club. So the first thing I want you to do is play with a bit more of an open face at address. And it's not much, I call it the 1 o'clock rule. We just want to point the leading edge of that club face up to about 1 o'clock on the clock face. For you, it'll be 11 o'clock on the camera. This does 2 things. A lot of people tend to understand that yes, that adds bounce to the club. The second thing it's going to make us do is actually release our angles a little bit sooner in an attempt to square the club up. When we release our angles, what happens? We have less shaft lean at impact, and the bounce of the club will be used. So you're going to start to see the club bounce off the ground instead of with a more square face where it tends to dig. So the second thing I want you to try, if you don't like looking down at a club face that's open at address, what you can do is start to roll the club open in the backswing. It's going to create the need for us to again release our angles early so that the club can release and square up to our target. In the process, we're adding bounce to our club, making sure that we don't dig that leading edge into the ground. I always try to feel like I'm opening the club up a little bit in the backswing so I can release my angles on the way through and ensure that I'm using the bounce. So the third thing you can try is returning the handle at impact to the same vertical angle that it was at address. So here's what I mean by that. If the club's right here at address, I want to make sure that when I swing back down to impact, that club is still pointed straight up and down or right towards my belt buckle. So if this is your technique of choice, what you're going to start to feel is that your hands are moving down a little bit slower in the downswing, almost very passive, and the club head is allowed to swing a bit more freely. So the club head's going to be allowed to catch up to the hands before we reach impact. What I want you to do now is get out onto the course, get out to the practice range and try each of the 3 techniques. Try them one at a time and then try combining 2 of the 3 or even all 3 of the techniques. And I promise you, you're going to see some immediate improvement in your wedge game. So get out there, we're going to try the first technique, open club face, All right, so I'm going to open it up to at least 1 o'clock. And I'm going to feel my angles release a little bit on the way down and really activate that bounce. Perfect. The bounce was absolutely perfect on that one. Second shot, we're going to try setting up with a bit more of a square face, so we'll still open it just a hair. And we're going to feel like we roll the club face open in the backswing so that we can release our angles and activate the bounce on the way through. That one should look something like this. All right. Now, I did push that out to the right a bit. If this is something you want to do, if you want to play with a more open face, you want to adjust your aim and your path a little bit more to the left to offset that open club face. So the last one we're going to do is we're going to feel like we're trying to return the handle of the shaft at impact to the position it was in at address. So straight up and down just about. But we're still going to open up the club face just a hair, and that one should look just like this. Perfect. So keep working on using the bounce of your wedge, and you're going to see immediate improvement around the greens. If you like this tip, please click the like button on this video, subscribe to my channel, and click the bell for notifications so you can see my weekly content. What I'd like you to do now is comment below. I want to know what you want to work on, so let me know. Thanks for coming by, and we'll see you next time.